a real privilege to have you here because you're in the midst of a whirlwind week because of the release of this record.
Lasers.
Lasers is out.
In stores right now.
Absolutely. Third studio record from Lupe. And let's talk about this cover, first of all. You've got the word losers with A over the O. That's been a big theme in your music from day one.
Yeah.
Explain that. Losers becoming lasers.
This in particular is I wanted to start with something that was inherently negative and transform it into something beautiful. Lasers stands for love always shines, every time remember to smile. Yes. And that's the original definition of lasers. It was transformed into light something 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 something.
Mm-hmm.
But $20 whoever can light
amplification by stimulated emission of radiation.
We've got an amazing audience here.
Greg owes you $20.
I'll see you after the show. Catch me after the show.
But back to it. Basically, it was about we get so caught up in the bigness of the world, that we feel like that we can't do anything about it. And so for me, the lesson behind this artwork is just saying that you don't have to change the entire thing. You can just alter one small piece of it, and that small piece might be your perspective of the world, or the way you view it, or the way you talk to somebody, or the way that today I'm not going to be as much of a bastard as I was yesterday, and maybe that person won't be that much of a bastard, and goes on. So it's really about changing something very, very small and transforming into something beautiful.
Mm-hmm. You talk about, I think there's also sort of a non-mainstream view that you've always had of yourself as a person in the world. This whole idea of being a loser, being a nerd, being a misfit, being outside of the mainstream, and that's okay. Kind of a very empowering message. Embrace who you are rather than try to be something you're not. And yet you are working within a very mainstream industry. Hip-hop is the biggest selling music in the world right now. And obviously artists can do certain things to sell records, or they can't. How is it being an artist who, with a non-mainstream view of the world and of yourself, able to operate within that system? In 25 words or less.
That's an impossibility for me. I'm very verbose. For me, it's about trying to walk that line. I walk a line of semi-celebrity, and fame and infamy, known and unknown, so to speak. So there's certain things that I can get away with, I don't have to acquiesce to the corporate or commercial forces, in certain aspects. But because I still have the other side, which is real, the fame is real, the celebrity is real, and I have to cater to that. I have to go on MTV, as much as I have to go on Sound Opinions,
Thanks for the plug. I didn't pay him for that, by the way.
You owe me $20. Yeah. So I have to cater to both, and sometimes I pull it off, magically, with songs like Superstar. I think Superstar was one of those records, was one of those records that did that. It was a commercial success, but at the same time too, it still spoke to a more cultural, something deeper, something bigger than that. And sometimes I do it, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I win at it, and sometimes I fail at it. It's all part of being Lupe Fiasco.
Absolutely, and it's one of those things. One of the most interesting subtexts of this record is your fan base is incredibly vocal, as we found out tonight already. But the fact that this record, it took a number of years to make. You had made two very successful records, it should be pointed out. I mean, got nominated for Grammys, sold hundreds of thousands of records.
Millions of records.
Yeah.
Millions.
Indeed. And yet your fans were concerned that this latest record would not be released, or wondering when it would be released. Started a petition drive, got over 30,000 signatures, rallied in Midtown Manhattan for your cause. When you look at something like that happening, what do you think of that?
Winning. Winning.
Charlie Sheen has entered the building.
Winning. No, it feels good for, you know, to have that connect, because nobody's ever the only other person that was recognized for having that was Fiona Apple, and so there's been no hip hop artist that has been done for, and very rare, if any, in any other genre of music as well, to have fans come out and protest the release of a record, you know, and the people who organized it were this 17-year-old and a 19-year-old from New Jersey, you know, and got permits from New York City and police protection and barricades and the whole 9 yards. Did it very peacefully, but also did it very aggressively, you know, and to the point where the big boss, Leo Cohen, you know, the king of kings in the music business, had to come down with a boombox on his shoulder like it's 1988, you know, to appease the fans. And they weren't pleased. They were arguing with him. You know, they were like, well, if you had this song for so long, how come you didn't put it out 2 months ago? You know, kind of a situation. But to see the, you know, the reaction and them putting themselves physically on the line, you know, for something that they believed in was very inspiring and very exhilarating, but at the same time very humbling, you know, and just increased the level of responsibility that I have with my music, you know.
Well, inspiring, and it produced a great song. You wrote a song. You wrote a song right after that, right?
Yes, yes. I wrote Words I Never Said after that.
Mm-hmm. Explain how that happened. So that's like art imitating life or life imitating art, one or the other.
Can I say balls?
You just did.
Okay. I felt after seeing that and seeing that like these kids had balls to come do that, because it isn't, you know, where they protested, it's across the street from UBS, you know, and the building that they were protesting is actually the AXA Financial Building, you know, so they're in the middle of moneyed interest, the corporate world, you know, kind of thing, ragtag band of kids protesting, and to see that they had the balls to do that, you know, in the midst of corporate America, you know, it was like I have to give them a record. I have to give them a record so that when this album comes out, you know, whoever critiques it or you know, the people who were saying like, why don't you protest something meaningful? Why don't you protest child hunger? Why don't you protest breast cancer? Why don't you protest poverty? And the kids were saying, well, if you listen to Lupe Fiasco's music, you'll see why we're doing this. And so for this record, I was like, oh, I got to give them something even, you know, just straight a kick to the nuts, you know, so to speak. And went and wrote, you know, Words I Never Said, you know, as kind of like, when they finally get it, that they can stand up, and if they're not proud of everything on this album, they can be at least proud of that record, saying like, this is why we love Lupe and this is why we want this album to come out.
It's good stuff, and it's great to see somebody, you know, attempting to infiltrate pop music with something more than just, you know, bling, whatever.
Yes.
And you're working that divide. I can tell on this record especially. It seemed like the ante was upped a little bit. I mean, those first two records were great, and it's like they want more, more, more.
Yes.
How do you give it to them and yet still maintain your integrity? How do you play that game? And you've been very frank about it. This was kind of a soul-sapping experience in a lot of ways. How are you now after going through this process? What does that make you think about your future work, how you're going to approach it? Did you learn anything from this process of making this record that's going to influence the way you make music going forward?
Yeah and no. You know, even with this album, some of this album is yeah and no. Some of this album is me saying, you know, I want to make a club record because I've never made a club record, you know, with no attachments to any mystical, social, anything. And it was, you know, there's certain records on here like All Black Everything where it's like I want to stay true to my core audience and not really care what the record label says or the fans say or critics say or anything. I love this record, and I know my fans are going to love this record, so to speak. So, you know, moving forward, you know, it was a very depression, you know, suicidal, the whole gambit of emotions that went into the whole process that was Lasers and my personal life when I was making Lasers. You know, it gave me a sense of I don't want to say numbness. It gave me an extra layer of protection. You know, I really don't care. You know, I really don't care about what people say. I don't really care what people think. All I care about is my music, you know, and I care about my fans. You know, as long as they're happy. But even if they're not happy, you know, you know, I still carry on through it, because at the end of the day, it's like it makes me happy.
That's cool.
You know.
One last thing. This man is a black belt in
4 black belts.
4 black belts in karate,
martial arts, Chinese.
Have you ever had to kick anybody's butt?
Yeah, couple times. Somebody called it bad a few times, you know. But that was school. That was back in the day.
Right,
youth.
right,
My
right.
youth. My youth.
Watch out! Don't mess with this guy. Lupe Fiasco, everyone. Thank you.